vacation. We got a really, really good one for you today. I'm joined with my friend Myron Pierce, and we're really happy to have Myron. Huge emergency in the church, and he just barely made it, and a little bit out of breath. But Myron, greet everybody, and then we'll. Why don't you introduce Soreka? In fact, you met him last summer
Yeah,
in England.
yeah. Hello, everybody. It's good to have you guys. Excited to be on with Ralph and my new good friend Sareka. Well, maybe not so new now, actually. Long story short, I met Ralph a few years ago and started stalking him and following him everywhere, Japan and ultimately to London. And when I found Ralph in London, then I ended up meeting my good friend Sareka. And Sareka is an amazing leader. His wife, they lead a great church. But Sareka, welcome, brother. How are you doing?
Doing well, Myron. So lovely to see you.
Yeah, man. Tell your beautiful bride I say hello.
I will definitely do that.
Yeah. Well, hey, Sareka, tell us a little bit about uh, just who you are and what God's doing.
Okay. So my name is Sureka Hulugala, and I come originally from Sri Lanka, and I'm now based in the UK. It's been 23 years since we've been in the UK, and my wife and I were actually sent from Sri Lanka to come to the UK to plant churches. And we actually came through my job at that time, and the Lord opened a door in that sphere. And so, we've been involved in
What
plant
was what
churches.
was that job? Soreka, take a moment and tell us about the job, and tell us about how the church in Sri Lanka prepared you to take advantage of a really great job transfer and become a missionary bivocationally.
I was a business analyst with a global pharmaceutical and household company. And so the job was literally to be in charge of an entire department across Europe. And from tiny Sri Lanka, it was a miracle in itself of how the Lord opened that door. But the church I come from in Sri Lanka, uh, the real heart of that church was to send out missionaries globally, but not in kind of the traditional way of missionaries being funded through the church and kind of going that route, but it was more of marketplace missionaries, people who would have jobs, who would get transfers, and that the church would then come alongside them and help them in planting churches. So my wife and I were a couple that the church prayed for, and we were trained in church planting. And then when the opportunity came, it seemed so natural to kind of step into it and to move to the UK.
So then you started basically in your house, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how it developed.
So we when we came, we started in our house, and we had a few people who came, and from that, um, we actually then had a larger gathering. We kind of informed everyone, and people just kind of got the message across. And we had actually a meeting, and where 17 people gave their lives to the Lord. And I got up at the end of the service and said, "Fine, next Sunday church starts here," and those 17 turned up. So it was not the traditional, have a Bible study and kind of thing. And then we saw within the first 2 years, just supernatural miracles happen, and we saw a real favor and a growth in what the Lord was doing. And then in while that was happening, I also took over another church in another part of London, which was a church that belonged to our denomination, but the pastors decided to leave for the US, and so we kind of took over that. So we were kind of running two churches plus doing a demanding job as well for a season.
And then it grew large enough that it kind of forced you to abandon the secular job.
Yes, that's right. So, over a period of, I think, 4 years, it grew to that level that I had to make a choice whether I was going to be pastoring or whether I was going to go on my kind of professional line. And I felt the Lord saying, it's time to move out now. And so,
So when you say it grew, it wasn't that a single congregation grew large. It was that a movement, because it is a movement, right?
it's a
Tell
move.
us a little bit about.
So, so we started seeing, other churches being planted. And so we then decided to come into full time, and then I also then took on the role of leading the movement here in the UK, and from kind of like about 12 or 13 churches, and with your involvement as well, Ralph, we grew to 50 plus churches today. So over a period of I guess 6 7 years.
So 50 plus churches, 6 or 7 years. I've talked to Sareka and asked him, any new churches this year? Yeah, we only got four, complaining about four new churches. I want, there's something you may not know this, but Americans tend to be a little bit chauvinistic and a little bit, there's this little problem that we have in America that you may not have heard of called racism. And it takes a lot of different forms. And one of those forms is cultural superiority. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we hear somebody from another country and they have an accent that's a little bit different than ours and their skin color is a little bit different than ours, it's really easy for us to say, well, that works for them. That wouldn't work for us. And then I don't have to listen to anything that you have to say because that works for you. You're different than me. It's really a horrible handicap. And sadly, the people who have this handicap enjoy it. They think that they're smart somehow. But one of the things that impressed me when I got to with you, and listeners don't know this, but we've worked together for 6 years. I've been there every year. This year I didn't get to go there, but I was there by Zoom a month ago, and it's great seeing what's going on. But I want you to tell us about the diversity of people in the UK, but also now you're reaching into Italy and you're reaching into France, and you're not just reaching Sri Lankans or South Asians. I know that you're reaching some immigrants from North Africa, but I see a lot of white people in this thing,
Yeah.
and just help us Americans get over us white Americans get over ourselves and our silly attitudes.
Okay. So where do you start? Yeah. So the one of the first churches that I pastored in the UK, and I think that's how the Lord kind of planned it, was a total white ethnic British church. And so Christian, my wife, and I were the only colored people in that church, and that was actually a really good training for us in how we cross over ethnicities, how we cross over the boundaries that we build up, so that we are able to minister and reach out to any nationality, any group of people. And we had to learn through the hard way. We had to learn different cultures as well. um, and then from there, it was like the Lord really melted our hearts to say, I brought you to the UK, and you're not just reaching out to your own people. You're not only reaching out to Jerusalem, but you're reaching out to Judea, Samaria, to every culture. And that's been for me. I love that, because I love cultures, I love people, and it doesn't matter what skin color or what background they come from. And so that the Lord has really opened up opportunities for us, that we are able to reach even cultures that may not even speak English, but yet we are able to reach out because there's the language of the love of Jesus. And
That's
so even the culture, the uh, the groupings that we have even right now within our networks. We have African, we have Chinese, we have British, we have Asian, and our thing was that every nationality, every ethnicity is valued, and that
That's
that
good.
was one of our core values, that they are created in the image and likeness of God, and therefore they are valued, they are valuable, and therefore I need them. That is another thing where we really spoke about humility, and we said, look, I need someone of a different culture. I'm not superior,
That's
but
good.
I humble myself to say, I need you. I need you to be who I am. And so therefore, we our values are those, so that even I'm able to reach out to the Italians, the French, the Russians, that whatever nationality. And to me, actually, that's more exciting, working with a multinational or multicultural environment.
That's good. I want Myron to weigh in a little bit. I'd like to hear um, Myron's first trip to the UK was to be with you guys,
Yeah.
and he hit the ball out of the park. He shared his testimony, and before he was done talking, you guys had organized a meeting for later in the week with a whole bunch of people, and that was exciting. But Myron has had some things come out of this. One is he met somebody when we were together in England, and he's now leading a church in Brixton, South London, and that kind of links to what you're doing, Team From It. But Myron, you just talk to us a little bit about what you thought, what you observed, what you felt, the questions you might have coming out of the time that we spent together.
Yeah, besides the fact that my flight came in later than usual because of my misorganization and lack of understanding about national flights. And then not to mention, Ralph, how, yes, I did share in session one. And I didn't know I was sharing in session one until I walked in session one. So if you're with Ralph, he's the ultimate hero maker. The other thing that I found out when I was in London is that it's easy to get lost. And so I found I found myself lost in London, and ended up on the south side, I believe, of London. And it was beautiful because I felt at home. So that's one of the impressions that I had. London is like a big city, with it's not a melting pot. It is an eclectic city that has various cultures, that that just makes for heaven. I came back and told my wife when I got back, I said, if there's anywhere that I'm going to move, it's going to be London. And so when I met Sareka and his family, and they graciously allowed me to speak at their church, I was just blown away at the story. Sareka, you shared a story with us about the group of people that had tension between one another. You remember that story you was telling me?
Yeah.
And it helps me understand why there's such a value, aside from it being the biblical value of how God is using you. Can you tell the story about the two different groups, and then how God is using you and your wife and kids to help reconcile that group of people?
Yeah. So where I come from, Sri Lanka, we went through a civil war for 30 years, and we saw hundreds of thousands of people, being killed. And so I belong to one ethnicity, and there's the other ethnicity. And when we came, that was one of the specific things that the Lord said, that we were not going to divide, but we were going to unite. And so, when we started the church, we also prayed that the Lord would bring people of those different ethnicities together, that through Christ, that there will be reconciliation. And it turned out that a guy who had actually fought in the war, for the opposite side, and to cut a long story short, someone who finally enlisted to becoming a suicide bomber While he got his papers, he got his assignment, and just before he completed it, he met Jesus, and he met Jesus, and he turned his life turned around. And then the Lord told him, "You have to go to this particular church, which is our church." And the Lord said, "I'm going to heal you, and you are going to be part of a reconciliation movement." And so he and I would, visit people. We would bring people together. We would wash feet and really bring reconciliation. And one of the things, we did many things, but one of the things was that our languages were different, but we would get people to sing in each other's language. We would literally say, start appreciating and valuing who they are, and so that that the hardened hearts would be melted. And so yeah, so that was part of the initial kind of ministry also that we did, was reconciliation between people.
I got some time to hang out with your sons, and one of the things I love about what you guys stem for, a lot of times when we talk about church planting, we're exclusively thinking about adults, but God is doing something pretty amazing through the next generation. Tell us a little bit about that and how that plays into multiplication and church planting and so forth.
Yeah, um, yeah. We work with young people, and when we say young people, they could be 15, they could be 17, or even younger. But it's like, if we see a calling, if we see a desire, then we will start working with you. And so we bring young people out. Now, of course, in the past couple of months, we've not been able to do that, but we would bring a group of young people to spend a weekend with us, and we would do that every month. We would bring them, so from Friday right up to Sunday, and we would mentor them, we would disciple them, so that they then are released into church planting, into discipleship, and literally doing what Jesus did. Uh, I've just about a month ago, I finished a group of young church planters, and the youngest was 17 years, and so they've been released to plant micro churches online. So we really invest into our young people, because we see that that's a generation that has to be touched. Because if we just only focus on the adults, then we are losing not just one generation, but at least 2 3 generations, and to recover that is going to be hard. And
So wait a minute, Pastor Sareka. You are training up 17-year-old church planters.
yes.
Okay. You just destroyed 75% of everybody's paradigm who is online with us right now. How are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And what does it take to do that?
Okay.
And what's happening because you did it?
Right. So over especially over this season, we were thinking, hey, we have the technology. The technology is out there. It's this generation that is using that technology most. So why not train them to plant churches online? And so the 17-year-old kid, like, he's like, yeah, I'm going to get my friends together, and he's been doing that. But again, it's the belief that the traditional belief is that I have to go to Bible school, I have to spend 4 years, and then once I come out, then I'm ready. I'm not, I'm a Bible school graduate, I'm a master's graduate, but so I'm not saying that is not important, but how did Jesus train his guys? By sitting with them, discipling them, walking with them, and putting them into the deep end. He sent them 2 by 2. He sent them on missions to kind of say, hey, now go. And so our ethos is really, we don't want to discriminate by age, but it's like, if you are being called to your generation, then you are the person who's going to have to step in, because I can't reach out to 17-year-olds. They talk a different language to me. but the 17-year-old will lead his friends. He will reach out to his generation. And so that's how we are able to then reach into every generation, so that we are able to lead those generations to Christ. We don't need to wait till they become adults. No, let's catch them where they are, where they are at the moment. So um, it's investing into these guys and believing in them, and also empowering them. One of the things that I do is that, I will take them through training, but it's important for me to kind of then get a few leaders, lay hands on these guys, and release them and say, we are releasing you, we are empowering you, we believe in what you're going to be doing. And that's been so
And how do you
important.
train? I know that you've done a pretty good job of putting together some video materials, and you've taken advantage of technology, and you've done a explain, take us through that just a little bit, your
Okay,
approach to training.
right. So pre-COVID, as I said, I would bring them to my house, and I would, spend time with them, like, and they would, the houses in England are not big houses. So part of it is that, you rough it out, you learn how to live in community. And so, they would have, we would just have sleeping bags, or air mattresses, or around our house. And so that's how I would kind of train them on a regular basis, like at least once a month, and then giving them loads of homework. Not just, and again, it's not just up here, but it's also practical stuff to do. And then come COVID, that's when I felt the Lord saying, look, we train them in a different angle, and using the technology again. And so, for the microchurch training, I would take them through 4 to 5 weeks. And we meet regularly, we meet weekly, we meet, kind of, and really I kind of invest into them. And then at the end of that, I release them, and then I keep following up on. And one of the conditions that they come for the training is that they plant a micro church at the end. That it's not
But
just,
now, go ahead.
sorry, it's not just, hey, it's a good class, I'll come and that's it. No, your commitment is that you're going to plant a church. And through these trainings, what I've seen is they start their micro church even before we finish the training.
So now with COVID, you've had to change that. What have you done, after COVID?
So with COVID, it's been totally on Zoom. It's been totally on Zoom, and that actually, COVID has given me the opportunity of not just being limited to a locality, but also being able to go global, so that I'm able to train people globally. And so to me, that's a real benefit, because I think so often, we can get so caught up and so fixated on this is the only way, that we miss out, God-given opportunities. And so through COVID, it's been like, yeah, let's be so flexible that we don't restrict ourselves. And one of the beautiful things I see this is that even nations that are closed up can be reached into, through the technology God has given us. So I've been able to
So
train.
when you
Sorry, go
say
ahead.
globally, where have you started?
So I've been, training people in India. I've been training people in Italy, in France, uh, Ukraine, Russia. So some of those countries, and also the US, Philippines.
And so here you are, you're a 10,000 member church, and you got all this technology, and you got this worldwide reach. And that's totally a lie, what I just said. Explain a little bit the parameters of what you're working with, because you guys don't have a whole lot of money. You're taking huge advantage of technology and leveraging things. And I think there's a lot for us to learn from that.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said 10,000, I'm like, oh, am I on the right conversation? Yeah. My home church, we're not a big church like, we have 70, 100 people. But yet again, I think it is like use what you have. Don't look for what you don't have. Use what you have and let the Lord increase that. And it's simple because we do everything out of my house because we don't even have a church building. We don't have our own building, so we rent our building right now. It's shut down from last March. We have not even gone in. But yet why should we get limited and restricted because of that? Why not work around that? Why not work around that, and have the wisdom to kind of say, let's do something different, but yet we still achieve our goal in making disciples who make disciples. And so that's been the thinking in working around with limitations, restrictions. And I think, I was telling someone recently that COVID did not surprise God. It surprised the church because we had to be stripped down to the bare minimum. And I think it's a lesson that we have learned of how do we navigate through and go back to some of the very basics of what the disciples did. Because most of my training that I do has been over on the Book of Acts, in how they trained, how they reached out. And for me, it's like, build disciples who are like those in the Book of Acts in chapter 8, chapter 9, that when persecution hit, the disciples were scattered, but wherever they went, they healed the sick, they cast demons out, they preached the gospel, made disciples, planted churches. And if every individual in our churches can be trained to do that, you know, you you're talking about an explosion. You're talking about huge networks, and so that it's not just the few who are up there, but it's like everyone is a part of this movement.
I would like to get a conversation started between you and Myron. Myron has done what you're doing in some spectacular ways globally. Also, particularly focusing on inner cities, which really need the help of the gospel. And Myron's written an excellent book called about planting digi churches. I'd like you to, recommend that book also before we're done, Myron, so that people can pick it up. But I'd like to hear a conversation between the two of you about what you do that's similar to each other and what you do that's different from each other. And the one issue that I see, the big stumbling block for everybody, isn't drawing a crowd. We figured out how to get on, do that. It's finding somebody that I can disciple who can now disciple others in a locality different than mine. And so I just want to kind of hand it over to Myron, to ask you some questions and then to pitch in. And Myron, I'm gonna ask you to do something that you normally wouldn't do on here, but I really would like you to tell us about your products. I mean, what you could train us who are listening to do, what Sareka is doing and what you're doing. So don't be shy about that. But let's just hear a little bit of give and take between you two guys.
Yeah, I love what Pastor Sareka is talking about, especially. I think I think I was one of the first practitioners to talk about DigiChurch. And there are a lot of like people who are theoretical and they've never planted anything where they're talking about DigiChurch or things like that. And before COVID hit, one of the things, because I have a digital marketing agency, and so that came in handy when COVID hit. And so one of the first pieces of material that I wrote was in response to a local nonprofit that's doing work in the inner city, and I was trying to land a deal with them. And so I thought, you know what, I need to get a book into the hands of their board of directors. And so I get this book in the hands of their board of directors called Why Social Media Should Be Your Number One Strategy. And then COVID hit. Now, COVID hit on the heels of this book. And then I thought, oh my gosh, Acts chapter 8, verse 1 was the persecution. But Acts chapter 2020 in America and beyond is a pandemic. And I started to see some parallels. I started to see how restriction and pandemic could actually drive resilience, because that's what I think has the church has gained in this restriction. We've gained some resilience.
Mm.
And so in the middle of this restriction, I thought, how awesome would it be to help the church learn how to pastor in a pandemic? And so I said, let's put out some material on how to help the church, not just pastor in a pandemic, but how to do digital ministry. Because here's the reality. Seminary didn't prepare us for this pandemic. No. And it certainly didn't prepare us for how to be digital missionaries. So now all of a sudden pastors are scrambling for how to do ministry. And the problem with it is that for the average pastor, we simply transitioned our historic model of doing ministry onto the digital airwaves, and many are in decline still as a result of it. And so the piece to doing digital ministry was just that. It's like, hey, here's some tools to do that. And then in the middle of that, I just said, you know what, let's do a trilogy and let's help churches learn how to launch digi churches. And it's been beautiful. And on our end, we're learning a whole lot on, at the end of the day, like Pastor Sareka said, it's about making disciples. But when you're a missionary on the 8th continent, which is social media is an 8th continent. It's one of the 8 wonders of the world. There are certain things that we have to look for that's biblical, that as an approach. So for example, if we're going to send out digital missionaries, then we have to teach them what it looks like to identify a person of peace. We have to teach them what it looks like to be a missionary in groups that they're not indigenous to, right? So a lot of these principles that we now have to appropriate that really are level 4, level 5 principles that we're now having to, propagate on when it comes to social platforms. So Sareka, one of my questions is, what principles or tools or utilities are you using to mobilize missionaries digitally? What are you finding that's effective? What's working? What's not working?
I think, but that was one of the reasons why I started doing videos, so that they could be trained and they could watch it on their own. But what really works is kind of this environment of using video conferencing software and having a face-to-face training, inspiring them, because that's what seems to be working for me a lot. And we find the man of peace, that comes through a connection that I've already had, or someone's kind of being connected with me. And then from there, we then build the other relationships that come through. But this has been the main mode of training, and not being able to spend physical time, but physically on Zoom, and having training that they can follow up with.
So I want to pull out for our audience what you said.
Yeah.
So in a pandemic, your focus, now obviously you're still a pastor, your focus became exclusively train.
Yeah.
The other thing that I heard you say was leveraging platforms like Zoom to provide training, but it being highly relational and highly interactive. Now, the reason why I don't want to under or oversimplify what you said, because the conversations that I saw in the pandemic, right in the middle of it, was how do we get people to show up to watch a service? That's not the right question. The right question is, how do we engage people of peace so that we can reach them with the gospel, raise them up as disciples, train them? I love what you said. The training is 5 weeks, and you can't even be in the training if you're not going to plant a micro church.
Yeah.
And if we were using exponential language, and we are, because we're part of exponential, what the conversations that you're talking about are level 4 and level 5. It's reproducing and multiplying.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'd like to bring us back to is Acts chapter 8. That was on the mind of the first century church.
Yeah. That was one of my inspirations. To me, it's like, what the apostles did in Jerusalem led to Acts 8 in terms of, when they were scattered. So it's like, right from day one, they were training these guys. They were teaching them, the doctrine, doing life together. And so that suddenly, when they were all scattered, it was almost like the autopilot was set in, and these guys just went into that mode, and they just launched themselves. And I think for me, that's Acts 8 has been a real challenger. That and I believe, even as leaders, we have to think differently. We have to think differently. We have to be bold as well. That it's like we can't go with the crowd. We have to stand out. We have to kind of say, okay, it's not been done before, but I'm willing to take that risk. If there's a mess, I'll clean it up. We are there to clean it up. But we, even today, I was talking to this young guy. He's a university student. He's planted a micro church. It's doubled now, and so he's having a problem of, okay, how can I now start, releasing leaders to start the second one? And it's like, I told him, you might need to clean up some of the messes, but you're there to do that. But yeah, so
and here's another point that you just brought up. So like, number one, the goal is multiplication. Number two, the platform is training via technology. Number three, after they have launched, your job in their life is now a coach.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Totally.
So what type of, when you think about coaching micro church planters, what's conducive to a great coach? What does it take to be a great coach? And what are you finding that micro church planters need after they've launched?
Right. I believe I kind of say it's a Paul and Timothy scenario, where as a coach, you come alongside them. You help them to think, you help them to dream, you help them to walk, but you are cheering them on. You are there to kind of, for almost kind of fall back for them to kind of say, yeah, and it's an encouragement to kind of say, hey, someone's walking with me. But you've shifted from the trainer, and now it's like, you're cheering them on. So for me, it's like, yeah, I will help you through. I will share my wisdom with you, but I want you to think as well. I want you to take those steps, and I'll be there if you fall. I'll be cheering you on. I'll be training you, but you are running the race now.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to recap for us, if people are taking notes and they're saying, okay, he's giving us a pathway to do this. Number one, disciple.
Yeah.
Disciple. And I'd say as a mission, before disciple, it's, I need to be a missionary digitally. Right. And so it's like, missionary, make disciples, train, coach, rinse and repeat. Missionary, mission, disciple, train, coach. Here's my question, going to the missionary piece. When it comes to digitally, what are you learning that's working when it comes to being a digital missionary?
Okay. One of the huge lessons we learned, and was that we have to have connection with people. Even where our church was concerned, first couple of months we ran kind of the slick service, but what we found was that we were losing the relationship, we were losing the connection, and we said, this is not right. We've gone back. We are not moving forward. And so we said, we're using Zoom so that we have this conversation. We had a, hey, how are you doing?
Wait. Can I interrupt? I must have misunderstood you, because I know so many American pastors, and I'm sure that they're all thinking they misunderstood what you said. You said you were going backwards when you were doing a show digitally, and now you're using Zoom for Sunday morning.
Yes, that's right.
Is that correct?
That's
So
totally correct.
if I was pastoring, I would be using Zoom, because people are isolated, and this allows us to have connection with each other. Describe that a little bit, and do you allow people to feedback? Do they get to talk to you, or do you just preach at them on Zoom? Tell us a little bit about that, and now I'll
Yeah.
flip it back to Myron.
Okay. So we went into Zoom because we didn't know who was connecting. That was a huge thing. We didn't know who was connecting. Were they okay? Were they isolated? Are they struggling? None of that. So what we did was we started Zoom, and even 15-20 minutes before the actual service. So we kind of said, hey, we're gonna just come on. We're gonna just have conversations. So it's like, hey, grandpa so and so, how are you doing? How, are you okay? Do you have food? And so that relationship, that communication, that connection begins even before we start the service. So that it's kind of like your tea and coffee before service. So we have that conversation, and then even through the service, we'll have a bit of worship, and I will share, but then we will also have breakout rooms, so that people then they are able to share about the message and talk about it and pray for one another, and we all come back, and maybe break bread, or kind of say bye to everyone. So that we found that has really worked, and I really don't want to go back to just running a service without any interaction.
So what you just said at the very last about, I don't want to go back to running a service without any interaction. I know that Myron is planning one, and I don't know if Nebraska, I'm not sure what's going on there, if you guys are in the building or not, but I think that post COVID, we're going to have to do church differently. It's going to have to look in the building a little bit more like what you just described, where we have a service, but there's interactivity going on in the building, and we're going to have to keep the Zoom thing going, because the whole world is being conditioned to do everything from home. And you go to the doctor from home. I order my groceries now from home. We do so many things from home. I go to church from home. Basically, I'm in a church right now that has one public meeting a month, and everything else is done on Zoom, and I like it. And I don't know that I would want to go back to every week in a building. So I'd like to hear a little interplay between you two guys about that, because Myron has got some pretty good ideas about what he's going to do once they do go back in the building. So let's talk about that one a little bit.
So we're already back, and so the caveat, or or small pushback to, well, I understand the connection would be, I've discovered as a digital marketer that I use our services that go live without Zoom as a missional approach to connecting with people who have no idea who we are.
Mm.
So after we have our live family gatherings, is what we call them, I'm going to run some ads around that family gathering so that I can then introduce or take people to the next step of from unaware to aware to engagement. Where I think the two can interface is, you know, because we're now back in the building. I'll talk about that in a minute. Is having the option to talk to somebody during the service. Hey, go to this room, or however you want to, you want to brand it. Go to this prayer room, go to this counseling room, go to this kids room. So in all of those rooms are Zoom rooms, right? So, or you can say, hey, join our pre-service party, right? And then we go live. And then as we go live, then people who are in the thread can then interact. So we have people who are interacting with people, because the reality is we really do live in a monologue world where we go to a movie, and that movie, we're just watching the movie, right? So we're already conditioned for that. I don't think that that's necessarily the end all, but so after we have our family gathering of worship and teaching and stuff like that, then there can be, so whether it's a pre-party or an after party or rooms that people can attend during our family gathering are some options digitally. Or like Sareka said, hey, we full-blown Zoom. The problem with that for us, or the challenge with that for anybody, is the intimidation factor. I'm jumping into a room with people I don't know. I'm jumping into a where I'm the, you know how it is, like when you're a new person sometimes. And so I like to actually go live without Zoom and then use that in our continuum to then get people in an after party or what we call our Facebook group community. That's kind of where we grab people. And then as we grab people, warm them up, we get them in a disciple making relationship. But as far as us on Sunday morning in the building, it's identical to what you're saying, Sareka. So we'll have a time of singing, and then I'll share, or one of our teammates will share. We'll get into the scriptures and I'll preach or teach, and then we'll share round tables. So we no longer meet in rows. We've transitioned to circles, right? And so I'd advocate for figure out how to do that. And obviously you guys are doing that right now, and you're meeting around circles really in Zoom. So the thing I like to add to all this is we are all learning as we go. We're learning best practices. And the problem I have sometimes is when us as pastors portray, especially as American pastors, we have the silver bullet. We have thousands of people that are attending our church online. Whereas if I was to go into the background of their data and their metrics, most of their metrics are skewed. Pastors, we like to skew metrics. But what I love that I'm hearing from you, Pastor Sareka, is that it's all about connection. Mm. And the way that we connect with one another, because we're wired for relationship, ensures that we can help people take the next step in their disciple-making journey.
Yeah. Actually, one of the things I missed mentioning was that we live stream the Zoom meeting, so that as you said, there are people who don't want to come in there.
Right.
So we see that they connect on Facebook.
Yeah.
We see people connecting from different nations, kind of on the Facebook level. So yeah, we have that option happening. But I think, yeah, definitely we have been talking that once we go back, services are going to be different. This is going to be part of that format. and also then how do we kind of then bridge the physical group and the digital group, and I guess that's something we can learn from you, is how we bridge that those two groups together so that there's still the same kind of flavor to
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, and if there are people watching who are you're wondering digital, physical, phygital, um, I personally laid out a number of resources. If you go to myronpierce.courses, there are a number of courses on even how to address this thing economically. Like if you're a pastor, maybe you're a smaller church pastor, and funding is always an issue. Check that stuff out, and obviously there's some books online that I wrote on Amazon that can kind of help. I know Pastor Sareka also has some videos on YouTube. Pastor Sareka, can you tell us about that? Just resources that you have that are available on YouTube?
Yeah, so on kind of under my name, you can search on YouTube, and I have I think about 40 short training videos for microchurch planting, right from the point of dreaming, right from the point of planning to running it, and even towards emotional health as well. And they're geared in the sense of, like, you can watch it as a team, you can watch it individually, and then there's always a question to discuss. So I've kind of structured it in that way.
And we just want everybody to know that won't always be free from Pastor Sareka, because after this call, I'm going to get on with him and show him how to package that as a course. And then you can help fund what God is doing in the UK instead of getting everything for free. Amen.
Amen. And I'm gonna jump on him about turning some of this into a book and making it a Kindle book that can go worldwide.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. I just want to say we got about another 10 minutes to talk here, but to me, this has been of this whole series Myron and I have done. I think this is pretty much the liveliest conversation we've had, and the one that the best addresses the whole COVID issue and the world that we're coming to, because we're not going back to 2019. The world is a different world out there, and I think it's to use an old phrase, it's a brave new world. It's an exciting world to me. This isn't a time for remorse. This is a time for rejoice.
Yeah.
So true.
Well, Pastor Sareka, is there anything else that you would like? This is going to be, this video time here is going to be on demand. There are going to be many more pastors that are keying in. Is there anything else that you feel that we need to know as new frontier leaders?
I think we've spoken a lot, but as a leader, be flexible. Be flexible. God has a strategy. Through COVID, through whatever may get thrown at us, even in the next couple of months or years, the Lord has a strategy to navigate through, and we need to tap into that. And when we do that, I was telling somebody, like, we were talking and we said, look, a lot of people say, oh, 2020 it's been a hopeless year, it's been a waste of a year, but for the church it's been a strategic year, and what we have to tap into.
Love it. Well, this has been phenomenal. If you guys are still on, guys and girls are still on, we want you to know we're just, Ralph and I, we're elated that you've joined us over the last couple of weeks. We want to continue to remind you that starting this month, November, December, multiplication.org/roundtables, we are having the conversation that we need to continue to have around race in America and race beyond America, and how diversity and multiculturalism actually matters. And so if you would like to join us, go to multiplication.org/roundtables. I think we may still even be open to you hosting a roundtable in your city. Jump on this, folk. We have leaders from all over the country and beyond that are going to help us really navigate this conversation together. I'm really excited and thankful to Todd Wilson for having the courage to stand up and to stand in solidarity with minorities and with the kingdom of God, actually, because God is pro value. Love what Pastor Sareka said, that people matter and we need them. And so this is an attempt and an expression of creating and instilling within the exponential family that all of us, black, white, red, brown, are better together. And so, Pastor Sareka, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And Ralph and I can't wait to come back to London.
Oh, can't wait to
Yeah.
have you guys. And thank you so much for having me. This has been really great.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.